Today, the world says farewell to a humble servant, a revolutionary soul, and a compassionate leader. Jorge Mario Bergoglio, known to the world as Pope Francis, has passed away. His papacy was not defined by grandeur, but by simplicity. Not by authority, but by mercy. Not by distance, but by proximity to the wounds of the world. From the moment he stepped onto the balcony of St. Peter's Basilica in March 2013, something changed. The world saw a man dressed not in lavish ceremony, but in humility. He stood before the faithful not as a king, but as a shepherd. His first words were not of power, but of prayer. Before blessing the crowd, he bowed his head and asked for their blessing upon him. It was in that gesture that his entire pontificate was summarized: a papacy of humility, service, and listening. Pope Francis was the first pope from Latin America, the first Jesuit, the first to choose the name Francis in honor of Saint Francis of Assisi, the saint of peace, simplicity, and love for the poor. That choice was no coincidence. It was a declaration. From the very first moment, Francis envisioned a church stripped of privilege, close to the people, and guided by compassion rather than dogma. He called for a church that walks with the poor, a church that heals the wounded rather than judging them from afar. He urged priests and bishops to be shepherds with the smell of the sheep, and reminded the Catholic world that the greatest mission is not to condemn, but to console. Throughout his papacy, Francis stood beside the marginalized. He visited the favelas, the refugee camps, the prisons. He washed the feet of prisoners, of migrants, of women and non-Christians, breaking old traditions to remind the world that service is the heart of Christian life. His papacy was a call to mercy in a world that so often chooses judgment. When asked about the place of homosexuals within the church, his simple yet profound reply, "Who am I to judge?" echoed across the globe. Those 5 words tore down walls of prejudice and extended a hand to millions who had long felt excluded from the embrace of faith. Francis taught that the church must open its doors wide, not only to the righteous, but above all to the broken. His pastoral heart reached those abandoned by both society and sometimes even by the church itself. The divorced, the poor, the immigrants, the sick, the elderly, and the forgotten. In 2015, with the publication of the encyclical Laudato Si', Francis lifted his voice on behalf of the planet. He called the earth our common home and warned against the consequences of human greed and exploitation. He placed care for the environment at the center of the Catholic mission and linked ecological responsibility with social justice, defending the poor and vulnerable who suffer most from climate change. His voice was not one that sought to divide, but to unite. In a world of growing walls and borders, Francis reached across religious and cultural lines. He met with leaders of Islam, Judaism, Orthodoxy, and Protestantism. His embrace of the Grand Imam of Al-Azhar in 2019 marked an unprecedented step in Christian-Muslim relations, and his signing of the document on human fraternity called for peace, dialogue, and mutual respect across all faiths and nations. For Francis, dialogue was never a strategy. It was a moral obligation. He believed the church must be a bridge, not a barricade. A field hospital, not a fortress. He invited humanity to look at the world not through the lens of fear, but through the lens of hope and fraternity. He also worked tirelessly to reform the church from within. He confronted scandals with courage, admitting the church's failures and insisting on transparency and justice. He reminded clergy and faithful alike that humility and service are the true measures of greatness, not power or privilege. Even as age and illness weakened his body, Francis remained strong in spirit. He continued to travel, to meet the faithful, and to preach the message that had always defined him. Mercy is stronger than judgment, love is stronger than fear, and hope must never be surrendered. He taught the world that faith is not a fortress for the pure, but a home for all. He called on humanity to care for the planet, to welcome the stranger,
Ho chiesto
to comfort the
permesso a
wounded,
Emanuele
and to
di
walk
dire
together
in
in unity.
pubblico la domanda e lui mi ha detto
His
di
final
sì,
years were
per questo
marked
la
by the
dirò.
same simplicity that shaped his first steps as Pope.
Poco
In his
tempo
wheelchair,
fa
with
è
his frail
mancato,
voice,
viene
he continued to
è
remind the
venuto a
Church
mancare
and the
mio
world
papà.
that no one is too small to be noticed by God, and no one is too lost to be embraced by love.
Lui era ateo,
Pope Francis did not leave behind monuments of
ma
stone or gold, but
ci ha
something
fatto
far more
battezzare a
enduring,
tutti e quattro
a revolution
figli.
of the heart. A
E
legacy of mercy,
era un
humility,
uomo
and
bravo.
hope that will continue to guide the Catholic Church long
È
after
in
his
cielo,
passing.
papà?
His papacy has come to an end, but his message remains alive in every act of kindness,
Che bello
in
che
every
un
voice
figlio
raised for the voiceless,
dica del
in
suo
every hand
papà
extended to the
che era
marginalized,
bravo.
in every heart that dares to love
Bella
without conditions.
testimonianza di quell'uomo
He reminded us all, with his life and his
che ha dato ai
words,
suoi figli
that the
perché i
Church
suoi
is at
figli
its best not when it seeks power, but when it
potranno
serves,
dire è
not
un
when it
uomo
judges,
bravo,
but when it
era un
loves,
uomo bravo.
not when
È
it
bella
closes its
testimonianza
doors, but when it opens them
del figlio
wide.
che ha ereditato
Rest in
quella
peace,
forza
Holy
del
Father.
papà, ha anche avuto
Your
il
mission
coraggio
on
di
earth is complete,
piangere
but
davanti a
your
tutti
light will
noi.
continue to shine, and your voice will continue to
Se
whisper to the
quell'uomo è
world.
stato
Let us
capace di
build
fare figli
bridges, not
così,
walls.
è vero, era
Let
un
us sow
uomo
love,
bravo,
not fear.
era un uomo
Let
bravo.
us walk together as brothers and sisters.
Quell'uomo non aveva